When high-speed express train ICL 210 reached the Great Belt Bridge en route to Copenhagen, its driver noticed something strange: sparks flying from an oncoming freight train. While initially unconcerned, he'd assumed it was the overhead electrics. When he finally worked out the cause of the sparks, he immediately applied the emergency brakes. However, it was now much too late. This is the story of the Great Belt Bridge rail accident. The Great Belt Fixed Link connects the Danish islands of Zealand and Funen via a bridge and tunnel system. Consisting of two main sections, the East Bridge and the West, the East, also known as the Great Belt Bridge, is a suspension bridge spanning the Great Belt Strait to connect the islands of Zealand and Sprogo in the middle. Built in the 90s, it is 6.7 kilometers or 4.2 miles in length. While the East Bridge serves road traffic, trains pass the Eastern Link via an undersea tunnel. The West Bridge, which completes the link, is actually two separate bridges, one for road and one for rail. At more than 6.6 kilometers or 4.1 miles in length, it spans between Sprogo and the major island of Funen. The combined distance of the entire Great Belt Link is over 18 kilometers or 11 miles. On January the 1st and 2nd, 2019, a storm dubbed Alfreda struck the Danish coast, with strong winds causing widespread flooding and chaos. The Danish Road Directorate closed the Great Belt Bridge for all road traffic on the night of January the 1st, expecting to reopen it by 11 AM the following day. Although the bridge remained open for rail traffic on the morning of the accident, had the wind speed increased by a further 9 miles per hour, it would have been closed for trains too, a minor variation that led to significant consequences. At around 7:10 AM on the 2nd of January, a high-speed intercity express train ICL 210 departed Odense headed for Copenhagen. Operated by DSB, the train had 131 passengers and 3 crew. Heading in the opposite direction was a freight service operated by DB Cargo. Loaded with semi-trailers carrying crates of empty Carlsberg beer bottles, it was heading for the Carlsberg Brewery on the Jutland Peninsula. A semi-trailer, a type of trailer attached to a semi-truck or tractor unit, is used for transporting road freight over long distances. Through a process referred to as piggybacking, semi-trailers can be loaded onto special flat-deck rail cars, often called pocket wagons in Denmark. The wheels of the semi-trailer lock into a lowered pocket section on the flat deck, while the front end of the trailer is secured with a kingpin into a coupler on the rail wagon. At around 7:30 AM, express train ICL 210 approached the West Bridge at 114 kilometers or 71 miles per hour. Already on the bridge battling the heavy winds was the DB Cargo train. It was on an adjacent line, heading towards them at more than 120 kilometers or 75 miles per hour. The driver of the passenger train would later describe seeing sparks coming from the oncoming train. However, he was initially unconcerned, as sparks from overhead wires were quite common. Security videos show the freight train powering across the bridge with the sparks clearly visible. As express train ICL 210 moves onto the bridge, its driver spots the source of the sparks. He immediately applies the emergency brakes. The first semi-trailer on the approaching train has dislodged and is now protruding outside the train's profile. As ICL 210 strikes the trailer at almost full speed, the leading axle of the trailer is torn off as the frame slashes the side of the passenger train, slicing the forward car open and causing significant damage to the rest. While the freight train stops on dry land a few hundred meters down the line, the express rolls to a stop on the bridge. Both trains are damaged, but somehow neither derailed. In the immediate aftermath of the accident, first responders took only a few minutes to reach the crash site. The damage to the trains was significant, with pieces of both strewn along the tracks. Inside the first car, police found the bodies of 5 passengers. In the second car was a 6th. while a head count revealed 2 people unaccounted for. The possibility that those missing may have fallen into the water while attempting to cross the small gap between the road and the rail bridge prompted police divers to search the water. However, the divers would not locate the missing bodies. By around 10:30 AM, the road bridge was reopened, only to close again when rubberneckers caused a traffic jam that blocked the bridge. By late afternoon, the train was towed away for inspection. This is when the final 2 bodies, hidden under the wreckage, were finally located. Struck by the trailer at a combined speed of over 200 kilometers or 124 miles per hour, identification for some victims was only made possible by their dental records. The final death toll was 8, with 16 left injured. The investigation was handled by the Accident Investigation Board Denmark. Investigator Bo Hanning said a collision between the passenger train and the semi-trailer from the freight train had caused the accident. Investigators focused on whether the semi-trailer was properly secured to the rail wagon. A disturbing early discovery showed that 2 other semi-trailers on the freight train had also dislodged from the coupler on the rail wagon, but thankfully they'd stayed in place. So how had 3 different semi-trailers on the same train not been properly secured? It's here that a minor scandal arose. The name of a friend who checked the loaded freight train before its departure had been crossed out by a union representative at DB Cargo. This led to the union rep being fired and given a 20-day suspended sentence for tampering with evidence. Testing at DB Cargo in conjunction with investigators revealed that the kingpin, which secures the semi-trailers to the coupler on the rail wagons, couldn't lock in place without proper greasing. Furthermore, it was difficult to tell if the kingpin wasn't locked in place. But even without the kingpin locked in place, theoretically, the trailers should not have moved. Investigators turned their attention to the windy conditions. Using a model train in a wind tunnel to examine how the wind moves across the bridge, investigators concluded that without the kingpin correctly locked, the conditions on the day were enough to cause the semi-trailers to dislodge from the couplers and move out of place. On the 18th of December 2019, the investigation board published its final report on the accident. It concluded that the cause was the semi-trailer not being locked in place, and the lack of adequate lubrication of the kingpin was why it wouldn't lock. Investigators found that if the locking mechanism had been functioning, the wind would not have been able to detach the semi-trailer from the freight train. Investigators also found there had been confusion as to who was responsible for the maintenance. Was it DB Cargo who leased and operated the wagons, or was it VTG Rail who owned them? Regardless, neither had done it. While no one could be held accountable for the death and injury caused, new guidelines on maintaining the coupler and kingpins were implemented, along with recommended changes with regards to trains operating on the Great Belt Bridge in windy conditions.